to Jonathan Taylor. Huge hole. He's at the 30. He's going to go. 10, 5, touchdown. Jonathan Taylor made a man miss the line of scrimmage and then runs it into Pater for a one-handed INT. Are you kidding me? Kenny Moore.
What a play by Nyheim Hines.
Horseshoe is back, baby. The horseshoe is back.
What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Bring the Juice Colts podcast. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about a couple of different players here. One that is currently on the Colts that may potentially be on the way out, and another player that could potentially be on his way in. So we ultimately are going to talk about, what their status is and what they could be come these next few months. Now, again, we don't have any inside information really when it comes to these players. We're just seeing what everybody else is and, interacting with people that are in the Colts. So, really there's very little information that comes out. Everybody knows that, the Colts are one of the few teams in the NFL that really don't let a lot of information slip when it comes to acquiring players, keeping players in, things of that nature. So a lot of things a lot of people really don't know. So for the first player we're going to talk about here is TY Hilton, and reasoning why TY Hilton might potentially be on his way out. A lot of Colts fans, including myself and Cody, have been saying a lot that we really don't want TY Hilton to leave. We really like his locker room presence, what he can still provide. We think that he's a guy that we want to continue to keep in Indianapolis for his last couple years before he decides to call it quits. But there was a couple tweets that have come out recently from when he was talking to some of his fans or some of the people he interacts with on social media. And somebody was asking him about, going to the Dolphins, because he's been getting a bunch of people saying that they wanted to go to the Dolphins, and posted a comment saying, "I'm a free agent." So, he's also had a tweet earlier saying that as somebody asked him if he's going to be in a Colts uniform this next year, he said, "Well, we'll find out here in the next 2 months." So, the reason why I say, there's potential that Hilton could be on his way out is because, there's really not been a lot of talk. There's really not been a lot of talk between Hilton and, Ballard. And if Ballard and the organization were made Hilton a top priority to bring back this offseason, then I would have thought Hilton probably wouldn't have said these things. But, the fact that he is going on social media, talking about how he's going to be a free agent and talking about whether or not he's going to potentially be on the team makes me think there's still doubt. There's still doubt whether or not Ballard and them are going to re-sign him. So, it's a lot of Colts fans' worst nightmares right now. T.Y. Hilton, I know, is not the T.Y. Hilton that we all know from before, many years before, but I mean, this guy's still a Colts legend when it comes to, receivers and players overall, and what he's done for this team cannot be understated. And, there's a lot of us that seem to think that we'd like to have him back, and, what he's able to provide, not just on the field, but in the locker room and in the community, he's just that kind of person. And to know that he could potentially not be on the Colts after this year kind of just makes me sad. I don't really know if I really want to either see him retire right now or have him go into another uniform. And it's sounding like he'd be willing to go into another uniform if a better opportunity is presented to him. And I really don't want that to happen because, I'd like to see him finish his career out in Indianapolis. So, again, guys, that's pretty much going to be it for T.Y. Hilton's news. Make of it as you wish. There's not really a lot more that I can provide you. We're just going to have to continue to look at more and see what happens in the end. So we will see. But another guy that I wanted to potentially talk about here, and somebody who, the Colts have reportedly been keeping an eye on for free agency here, is, if you guys haven't checked out Cody's video on Hunter Henry, be sure to go check that one out. And the reason I say that is because this other player that I'm going to talk about here is a tight end as well. So we talk about it here, and that is Zach Ertz, the 30-year-old tight end from Philadelphia. So a lot of people, we kind of had his name mentioned last offseason, whether or not we'd be able to get him or not, whether we'd trade for him or not. We just ended up getting Trey Burton, who was a former Eagle and a former Bear. But, Zach Ertz is another interesting option. Last season played in 11 games, 36 catches for 335 yards, 9.3 yards per catch, and a touchdown. So, not a lot of stats there for a Zach Ertz. You talk a lot about Zach Ertz's career and how big he's been, right? Just 2-3 years ago, this guy was I would even say just 2 years ago, this guy was a top 5 tight end, no question about it. Am I saying that he's not a good tight end now? No, I'm not saying that. I'm simply stating that you look at some of the things that are going up against Zach Ertz right now that could make sense for Indianapolis to actually pursue if they want, because there's some circumstances surrounding Zach Ertz that might lower his value. So he's currently under contract. So unless the Eagles cut him, which would make him a free agent, which I don't believe they would actually cut him. I don't think they would, unless they have extreme faith in Dallas Goedert to continue to be the number one. And then you would just cut Zach Ertz for payroll reasons. Then the Colts would have to trade for him. Now, the reason that I think the Colts could make this work if they wanted to is, again, if they cut him, then I think Zach Ertz would want to come to Indianapolis, with his old coach and Frank Reich, in the system that we like to use our tight ends. Everybody knows that Indianapolis loves to use their tight ends. They're tight end by committee. We love to get the tight ends involved, and I think that would make Zach Ertz much happier, because knowing that whatever quarterback we put back there, that's how the Colts like to run their offense. And, again, he's 30 years old, so he's not a young guy by any stretch. He's a veteran, probably has a couple years left in him. And that's just to deal with injury, because he's had a couple injuries over the last couple years that have made him miss games, but also with the fact that, the quarterback situation has been so awkward for the Eagles over the last 2 years that, a lot of people are wondering, was it really Zach's fault? Even Zach Ertz in 2019, when he was dealing with a kidney issue, was still playing. So I like Zach Ertz there. And like I said, guys, his production these last few years hasn't been amazing. He did really well in 2019, but in 2020, and you look at the stats, he was nowhere near the number one. A lot of people were wondering why that was. So all of these taken into account make you wonder if Zach Ertz's value, his trade value, is down a little bit. What would the Eagles be willing to give up for him? I know when you think of Zach Ertz, you think of the big name, right? But, at the same time, we just don't know if Zach Ertz is going to return back to form because of the fact that he's 30 years old. He's dealt with injuries. He's not been the same player he was as of 2018 and so on and so on. So, you get a veteran guy that could come in here and I think really help this tight end group. He would be a solid receiving tight end for us. I have firm confidence in that, because you don't know whether or not you're going to re-sign Trey Burton and what you're going to do with Jack Doyle's future on the line there. So, this is all whether or not the Colts actually would want to continue to pursue Zach Ertz. Obviously, if the Colts can't get him for anything less than for a third rounder or less, I don't anticipate Chris Ballard to really be knocking on the door for Zach Ertz, because there's no way I would throw a first-round draft pick at Zach Ertz right now. It's not worth that. Not worth that, especially when you're 30 years old. You already have confidence in your tight end group that if you kept them together, at least it's a solid tight end group. You don't need a tight end right now, and especially to be throwing out first picks like that, and especially for a second. I wouldn't even trade a second for him. Third or less would be an ideal option for Colts to get Ertz And that's if they want to actually trade for him. So those are two players, guys. Future status with the Colts to be determined, but that's just some talking points there. So thank you guys so much. Let me know what you think about TY Hilton giving hints that he may not be back next year, and hints on whether or not you think Zach Ertz is going to potentially be a Colt after, several years of us talking about him finally being a Colt. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. And as always, go Colts.